For decades, Linda Ronstadt stood as one of the most powerful voices in American music. She could fill arenas with her sound, move effortlessly between genres, and redefine what it meant to be a woman in the male-dominated world of rock. But behind the applause and endless accolades, Linda carried insecurities, heartbreak, and ultimately a cruel twist of fate that stole the very thing that defined her. Today, at 78, she speaks with a kind of honesty that strips away the glamour, leaving only the raw truth of her life, her loves, and the struggles no one wanted to believe. Early life and musical roots. Linda Maria Ronstadt was born on July 15, 1946, in Tucson, Arizona, into a family where music was more than just a pastime. It was a way of life. Her grandfather had been a Mexican bandleader. Her father serenaded her mother with Mexican folk songs in a warm baritone, and her mother played the ukulele. Music flowed through the household, and Linda, along with her siblings Peter, Michael, and Gretchen, grew up harmonizing and experimenting with sounds. At the age of 14, she formed a folk trio with her brother and sister, performing locally and discovering the thrill of connecting with an audience. Her father, Gilbert, ran the family hardware and machinery business, but was passionate about preserving the Mexican traditions that shaped their heritage. These influences never left Linda. Even as she later conquered rock, country, and pop, the melodies of her childhood remained a constant reminder of who she was. In the 1950s, the Ronstadt family was even featured in Family Circle magazine, showcasing their strong ties and cultural pride. As she entered high school and then the University of Arizona, Linda's focus shifted more toward music. She was inspired by the cultural shifts happening around her: folk revival, country influences, and the rise of singer-songwriters. At 19, she made the bold decision to leave college behind and follow the pull of music to Los Angeles. There she reconnected with fellow Tucson musician Bob Kimmel, who, along with guitarist Kenny Edwards, helped form what would become the Stone Ponies. The group gained modest attention, but in 1967, everything changed. Their single, Different Drum, written by Michael Nesmith, became a surprise hit. Linda's crystal-clear voice, equal parts powerful and vulnerable, stood out immediately. For many, this was their first encounter with her remarkable gift. Although the Stone Ponies would eventually fade, that song announced Linda Ronstadt to the world. What began as a young woman singing harmonies at home was now the start of one of the most extraordinary careers in American music. The breakthrough years of the 1970s. By the early 1970s, Linda Ronstadt was already carving a name for herself in Los Angeles. But it was her 1974 album, Heart Like a Wheel, that transformed her into a superstar. This record was her breakthrough, delivering the #1 single, You're No Good, along with When Will I Be Loved and It Doesn't Matter Anymore. For the first time, her voice was not just admired, it dominated the charts. That album won her the first of what would eventually become 12 Grammy Awards, proving she had arrived in the big leagues of music. Yet success was not instant or easy. For years, Linda had struggled to find her footing as a solo artist. She recorded several albums that gained critical recognition, but never broke through commercially. She even admitted to deep insecurities, once telling The New Yorker that when she saw people whispering during her concerts, she imagined they were saying, "She's the worst singer I ever heard." She did not enjoy looking at audiences and often had to calm herself with the simple instruction, breathe and sing. Despite her self-doubt, her talent was undeniable, and her determination drove her forward. As the decade continued, her albums Simple Dreams and Living in the USA cemented her position as the Queen of Rock. She became the first woman to sell out arena tours, a groundbreaking achievement in a business still dominated by men. Her face appeared on the covers of Rolling Stone, Newsweek, and Time, making her one of the most recognizable stars of the era. Her versatility set her apart. While others were locked into one genre, Linda crossed boundaries with ease: rock, country, pop, even folk standards. Songs like Blue Bayou and It's So Easy became anthems of the decade, each performance filled with the raw emotion that made her unique. She collaborated with musicians who would later form the Eagles, toured with Neil Young, and stood on stages alongside Jackson Browne and The Doors. By the end of the 1970s, Linda Ronstadt was not just a singer, she was the top female pop star in America, paving the way for women to command the stage as equals. But with fame came pressures, and her next chapter would reveal just how complex her journey would become. Reinvention and bold choices in the 1980s. As the 1980s began, Linda Ronstadt had already conquered the pop and rock charts, but instead of staying comfortable, she chose to take risks that many thought would end her career. In 1980, she accepted a role in the Broadway revival of The Pirates of Penzance. For a rock singer to step into Gilbert and Sullivan operetta was seen as unthinkable at the time, yet Linda proved the critics wrong, earning a Tony nomination for her performance. She showed that her voice, clear and powerful, could adapt to theatrical and classical traditions just as easily as it had dominated radio. Her next bold move came with a series of albums recorded with legendary arranger Nelson Riddle. These collections of jazz and pop standards, songs that had been relegated to elevators and easy listening stations, were suddenly reborn through her interpretations. For Linda, this was not about chasing trends, but about honoring music she had loved since childhood. The gamble paid off. The albums went multi-platinum and introduced a new generation to the Great American Songbook. But she did not stop there. In 1987, she joined forces with Dolly Parton and Emmylou Harris to record the long-anticipated trio album. The project had been delayed for years due to conflicting schedules, but when it finally arrived, it was nothing short of magic. Their harmonies were seamless, their respect for one another genuine, and the record soared to the top of the country charts, earning them a Grammy. That same year, Linda returned to her roots with Canciones de mi Padre, a Spanish-language album honoring her Mexican heritage. It became the best-selling non-English album in U.S. history, another boundary shattered by a woman who refused to be confined. By the end of the decade, Linda was still pushing into new directions. She scored adult contemporary hits with duets alongside Aaron Neville, and she showed no signs of slowing down. Yet away from the microphone, her personal life was complicated. Fame had made her one of the most visible women in America, but it had also made her private relationships the subject of endless speculation. The next chapter of her life would reveal a struggle to balance love, independence, and identity while the entire world watched. Love, independence, and the decision never to marry. While Linda Ronstadt's voice carried her to the heights of superstardom, her personal life was often under the same spotlight. In the early 1970s, she dated musician J.D. Souther, who collaborated with her on several songs and co-produced Don't Cry Now. By the mid-1970s, she was in a highly publicized relationship with Jerry Brown, then governor of California and later a presidential candidate. The two even shared a Newsweek cover in 1979, a rare blend of politics and pop culture that fascinated the nation. Despite the glamour of these relationships, Linda often spoke of the difficulties in finding a partner who could truly match her. In a 1974 interview, she admitted the challenge of balance. One man might be kind but uninspired musically, while another might take her breath away artistically, yet be impossible to live with. She confessed, "Then after that, it's the problem of finding someone that can stand you." This candid honesty revealed a woman searching not for status or convenience, but for a deeper connection that proved elusive. In the 1980s, she briefly dated comedian Jim Carrey and later entered a long engagement with filmmaker George Lucas. For a time, it appeared marriage was finally on the horizon, but by the late 1980s, the engagement ended quietly. In the 1990s, her musical collaborations with Aaron Neville led to a close personal relationship, and the two were often described as the first couple of pop music. Still, even then, marriage never followed. Instead, Linda chose another path to fulfill her desire for family. In 1990, she adopted her daughter, Mary Clementine, and in 1994, her son, Carlos. Motherhood became the center of her life, and she moved away from Los Angeles, first to San Francisco and eventually back to Tucson, Arizona, to raise her children away from the chaos of fame. When asked later in life why she never married, Linda admitted she had no talent for compromise, saying plainly, "I didn't need to get married." For a woman so defined by her independence and unwillingness to bend to industry pressures, it was no surprise that she also resisted societal expectations about marriage. But just as she found peace in her personal decisions, a devastating shift was about to change her life forever. The cruel twist, losing her voice to illness. For Linda Ronstadt, singing was not just a career, it was her very identity. But in the early 2000s, she began to notice troubling changes. Her once effortless voice was faltering. Notes that had always come naturally suddenly felt like a struggle. At first, she dismissed it as age or fatigue, but as the problem worsened, she knew something was deeply wrong. In 2012, doctors finally delivered the devastating news. She had Parkinson's disease. By 2013, she revealed the diagnosis publicly, explaining that she had already been living with symptoms for 7 or 8 years. The disease, which attacks the nervous system, robbed her of muscle control, making it impossible to sing. In an interview with Vanity Fair, she admitted that her last 2 records had been made with almost no vocal ability left. She compared it to a painter working with only 3 colors: brown, ivory, and black, limiting, frustrating, but still a way of creating. The public's reaction was one of heartbreak. A woman who had built her life on sound was now silenced by her own body. For Linda, the hardest part was not the loss of fame or touring, but the simple, everyday joy of singing. She once said, "I can sing in my brain." It's not quite the same. Sometimes my brain chooses a song, and sometimes it chooses the worst music, like a bad Christmas carol, playing over and over in my head. Her health continued to decline. In 2019, doctors revised her diagnosis, determining that she actually suffered from progressive supranuclear palsy, PSP, a rare degenerative disease often mistaken for Parkinson's. PSP not only affected her voice, but also her movement, balance, and speech. The once vibrant performer now relied on canes, walkers, and eventually wheelchairs. Yet even in the face of this cruel twist, Linda showed resilience. She continued to make public appearances, wrote her memoir Simple Dreams in 2013, and participated in the documentary Linda Ronstadt, The Sound of My Voice, in 2019. Her willingness to speak openly about her illness turned her private pain into public awareness, inspiring countless others living with similar diagnoses. Still, it was undeniable. The voice that once defined an era was gone, leaving Linda to confront life in a silence she never asked for. Legacy, activism, and inspiration at 78. Though her singing career ended far earlier than anyone expected, Linda Ronstadt refused to fade quietly into the background. Even after illness forced her retirement in 2011, she remained active in public life, lending her voice, this time not in song, but in advocacy and reflection. Her political convictions often sparked controversy. In 2004, at a Las Vegas concert, she dedicated Desperado to filmmaker Michael Moore and praised his documentary Fahrenheit 9/11. Half the crowd applauded while the other half booed. The incident escalated to headlines across the country when the venue's management removed her from the hotel. Far from backing down, Linda continued to speak out, calling President George W. Bush enormously incompetent and criticizing the war in Iraq. In later years, she supported immigrant rights, denounced Arizona's controversial SB 1070 law, and championed same-sex marriage. For Linda, silence was never an option. Her activism extended to culture as well. She proudly celebrated her Mexican heritage through albums like Canciones de mi Padre and later Más Canciones, helping to bring traditional Mexican music to mainstream American audiences. She also served as artistic director for the San Jose Mariachi and Mexican Heritage Festival, ensuring that younger generations would inherit the music that shaped her. In 2009, the Martin Guitar Company even released a limited edition Linda Ronstadt model guitar, with proceeds going to support sustainable agriculture, another cause close to her heart. Recognition continued to pour in. She was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 2014, awarded the National Medal of Arts and Humanities the same year, and honored at the Kennedy Center in 2019. Each award symbolized not just her extraordinary voice, but her impact as a cultural trailblazer who crossed genres and broke barriers for women in music. Now at 78, Linda lives quietly between her homes in Tucson and San Francisco. Though confined by illness, she is surrounded by family, including her children, Mary and Carlos, who remain her greatest joy. Her story is one of triumph and tragedy, a woman whose voice defined a generation, only to have that gift taken from her. Yet her legacy endures, not only in the timeless songs, but in the honesty with which she has faced the world, even in her most vulnerable moments. Linda Ronstadt's journey reminds us how fragile and precious our gifts can be. She gave the world her voice, and even in silence, she continues to inspire with her courage. What is the Linda Ronstadt song that means the most to you? Share it with us in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories of music's greatest legends.